Hey there berries, welcome to my brand season 11 support guide. If you're not familiar with myself, I am a high ELO player on EU West. Last season ended Master, before I've been Challenger, and do a lot of support guides and coaching sessions for players to basically improve at League of Legends. So this is for brand. I've done similar ones like this to other support champions if you're interested. So, if you're interested in other support champions after playing brand, feel free to check them out, such as like Seraphine or like Thresh, etc., etc. Lots of different champions that I've covered for both Season 10 and Season 11. So this is an updated guide for brand. We're going to be going through runes, items, abilities, skill orders, and any tips and tricks. So yeah, sit back, get a drink, and here we go. So brand's best tree is the Dark Harvest tree. There's lots of things that you can mine or tweak here, which we'll go through. But what you're seeing on screen right now with the Domination primary, Sorcery secondary is a very good baseline to work off. So Dark Harvest is extremely easy to proc off brand. He has lots of little dots, which are damage over time things that are happening. So it's very easy to proc off Dark Harvest and get many resets off that, not only just throughout the laning phase, but also throughout in team fights. Taste of Blood is really nice as well. It's the best option here. It allows you to heal every 20 seconds off a target. So, if there's a lingering dot left over on a target, you'll get healed from that as well. But if you're a little bit low on HP, try and look and see if you can get a safe poke in just to get some top HP up a little bit. It's as easy as that. You're primarily getting most of the effect from this from the laning phase. Eyeball Collection, you should be picking up a lot of kills and assists when playing brand. So Eyeball Collection is a good way to snowball the effect of the game and give you more ability power up to those 10 stacks that you need by getting kills or assists. And now the most interesting one here is looking at the different hunters here. The best one, I think, for particularly a newer player. So if you're a newer player looking at brand for like the first time, or you haven't had that many games of him, I would suggest Ultimate Hunter. It's going to be the main bottleneck. The cooldown on that is going to be the main issue in team fights. Like there's a team fight that's happened, you've reset, you're coming back to another one, but your ultimate's just not quite ready for the next fight. So Ultimate Hunter can help you get around that. Alternatively, with Ludens, we'll talk about the items a little bit later on, but with Ludens, if you do opt into going to that item build, then you can go into Ingenious Hunter and reduce not only the cooldown of the Ludens, but also reduce the cooldown of your trinkets. So that's like the free wards or the oracles that you can get. So both are valid options. So if you're going into a Ludens build, you can always do Ingenious Hunter. And if you are going to do Ingenious Hunter, I would suggest also to pair that up with Biscuits and Cosmic Insight. That will further increase your item haste on the Ludens, and also the Summoner haste is quite nice. It means your flash and your ignite will be reduced in cooldown. But let's have a look back to the base build that I want you to look at first. So we'll be going Ultimate Hunter and then into the Sorcery Mana Flow Band. So whenever time you land an ability, when it's ready, you'll get 25 mana. And then, once it caps out, once you get 10 stacks, you're going to be getting mana regen per second, which is really nice. And then Scorch, once again in the laning phase, another way to do a little bit extra damage. And also, can proc Dark Harvest. You can also, once again, if you decide that you're not too keen on these, or you'd like your flash and ignite up a little bit more, maybe you're going up against a hard engage support like a Leona or something like that in the bot lane. You could also do Cookies and Cosmic Insight again. This is totally valid. You'll have slightly less mana regen in the mid game onwards, which overall isn't too much of an issue, but can lead up if the fights last a particular long time. But the Biscuits will give you a little bit more health sustain in the laning phase. Also, you have the option of selling Biscuits for money at the shop, and you'll still get the increased mana cap by 50. And then, as mentioned before, the Cosmic Insight, reducing your flash cooldown in particular, can be pretty useful playing against those hard engage champions. In the bot lane, double adaptive is totally fine. You can opt into ability haste at the start as well if you wish. Like this is absolutely fine too. It's just genuinely you're looking for a bit more oomph early with your abilities. You're going to have mana issues in the laning phase anyway. So having more cooldown on that isn't necessarily going to make any difference. The bit more oomph in damage is generally the thing that's going to help you out the most. The haste will help you more out in that mid game onwards. And as always, make sure that you're picking up the correct defensive rune. Sometimes you are up against double magic damage on bot side, so make sure you do pick up that magic resist rune if needed. Otherwise, the armor is fine. I would not recommend the health, as the armor will reduce the damage that you take from turret shots and from the minions as well. So those are the runes covered. I'm just going to swap it back to this one. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump into practice tool, and we're going to have a look at everything from items, abilities, and skill orders. When you're playing Brand, as mentioned before, just briefly, you will want to be picking up the Ignite and the Flash. Those are the two most common things. Once again, you're looking for kills in the bot lane. You want that snowball effect, basically, because if you don't end up with a kill in bot lane, it's going to be it's like impossible, but it does make it a lot more difficult for you to basically solo carry that game as a support, because that's basically what Brand is. He's a carry in a support role. So jumping into the practice tool here. We can have a look at the abilities first, and then what we'll do is after we talk about the abilities, we'll be looking at the items. So let me just give myself everything here. Let's spawn in a couple of target dummies. And let's just make sure that those minions don't spawn. Fantastic. So Brand's passive is that whenever you deal damage with an ability, it's going to do a blaze stack, which is going to do a % damage of the target's maximum health. So Brand's very good against targets that have high max health. So thinking like things like the Cho'Gath in particular is extremely good, as just naturally from this passive, you're going to be doing a lot of extra damage to him. Now, if you manage in a short span of time, manage to land 3 abilities on a target, that target will detonate and basically explode after a very short period of time. So I'll just show you an example of this. So 1 ability, 2 abilities, and then 3 abilities. You've got that massive ring going around there. And then anyone else hit by that will get 1 blaze stack. And also they will take damage from the detonation effect. So it can be huge in a team fight when all the enemies are clumped up. It means that, you know, you got a couple of abilities here that do AoE, area of effect. So you will end up landing multiple blaze targets stacks on multiple different people. And even if you don't get the full blaze effect off, the blaze effect does stack. So if you only get 2 stacks on, it will, in this case at the moment, only do, well, it will do 6% max health of the target's damage over a period of time. So you can imagine now, like, if you can combo this with some of the other items and things like that, then you can kind of see like how it can be quite devastating, even just being hit by 1 blaze stack, which we'll cover more in the item section. The first ability on Brand is the Seer, the Q. It's a projectile. It's very similar to an Ezreal Mystic Shot, if you're familiar with that. It's just a Q projectile. Minions can block this, and it doesn't pass through targets. So if it hits 1 target, it will just hit them, and of course apply that 1 blaze stack. Now, if the person is already on fire and they get hit by this, it will stun them. So that's your hard crowd control. That's your main form of crowd control for picking someone off, particularly early in the laning phase. Is making sure the target has a blaze stack on them already with one of your other abilities, and then landing that stun onto them. Now we'll talk about Brand's W. This is the ability that you're going to be maxing first. It does the most damage. With no blaze stack, it does just the AoE and applies the blaze stack and does damage. If the target is already on fire, they take increased amount of damage. Not only do they take more damage from the base amount, but also more AP scaling. So at the moment on this patch, you can see it goes from a 0.6 ratio to a 0.75. So the more AP you have, the more that this proc effect will give you. So base amount here, you can see it 265. If the target is already on fire, then it went up to around about 362, I think it just said there. So a considerable DPS increase. So once again, you only ideally, you can use this in lane as a poke. So you'll be like staying max range and you'll be using this to poke, that's fine. Brand's other abilities require you to get a little bit closer, which we'll talk about in a second. But the ideal is obviously, you know, you have that blaze stack on them already, so then you use that as an extra damage boost. So E, his conflagration, this actually got changed recently in Season 11. So if you're familiar with Season 10 Brand, I can't remember exactly when the change came through. This is going to be new to you. So if you haven't played Brand since Season 10, this is a new addition that they gave Brand. So his E, when you apply it, does that little circle around, so it sets a individual target ablaze. So this isn't a skill shot, it's just point and click, and then any other unit in that circle will also get set on fire. Now if the target is already set on fire, this range is doubled. So now you can see when it show the range, it should hit this dummy at the back here. There we go. Now that's a really good way in lane. It's not an effective DPS tool, but is a really good way to either spread your blaze stacks out on multiple different targets in a team fight, or in lane or minions particularly to spread out your blaze so that you can hit someone to proc a Dark Harvest charge. So those are the two main ways. It's not really there for damage. It's just there to help you proc Dark Harvest stacks, or to help set up for the rest of your combo. Brand's ultimate is Pyroclasm. I believe this ability got changed at late Season 10 as well. So once again, this is a new change for you potentially. Brand fires out his ultimate, and it bounces 5 times. Any targets that are already set by Blaze, they will then get slowed from the effect as well. So it won't slow them unless they are already blazed. Now there is some prioritizing on the blaze stacks as well on this ultimate. So if the target already has blaze stacks, it will look to try and get it so that they have 3 stacks. Otherwise, if there's no other target around, it will then, no other valid target around, it would actually bounce to Brand. I don't know if this is ult is going to bounce off to the one behind it. Yeah, it will do. So see how it didn't bounce further over to the far away target because it was prioritizing on making sure that this target here had 3 blaze stacks. So 1 on this one, 2 on this one, 3 on this one. Now we can mess around with this because in a team fight you might not necessarily be popping this as your first one. It is a good initiator though in a team fight just to get people set on fire really quickly so that you can then do your other abilities. There's lots of different like mini combos that you can do with Brand with this, and you have lots of different options depending on what kind of fight situation that you're in. So for example, if this target was already set on fire by 2 charges, so that's already got 2 blaze stacks. Now this has got 3. Now it's now prioritizing hitting these other targets that don't already have the blaze stack. So you can see how when we initially used the ultimate, it only prioritized on hitting this one target here, but because we had set blaze stacks on this first target dummy, it then made it so that it just ignored this target to hitting it anymore because it had already hit max blaze stacks. So if we do a full detonation here, once again it still hits the targets at the back and then comes back over to the first one to try and apply a brand new blaze stack. Unfortunately, it wasn't very successful. Another thing you could do with the pyroclasm as well, which is really interesting, is you can use yourself as a bounce target. Now, you won't get hit by the damage by your own ultimate, but you can help use it to keep bouncing targets if there's no other valid target around. The pyroclasm, the ultimate, can also bounce over to minions and like the dragon buff and baron, etc., and other champions. So if there's a minion nearby, it can potentially bounce from a minion to the enemy champion. But if you're literally the only person nearby, you can use yourself. I'll try and show you an example. Right, let's clear these dummies. So it's just one dummy. You know, if I fire out this ultimate here, it's not bouncing. So it only just did one instance of damage. But if we get closer, we managed to get this 3 blaze stacks on that target. And we just used ourselves as like another unit in order to bounce that over. So one way to initiate, we talk about some of the little tricks that you can do now with these abilities. So one way that I like initiating fights, like say if it's a soul target like this, and I'm in this kind of range away, is actually flash ult, and then you can then instantly stun the target then with your Q, because you're a melee range of them, but essentially at this point. And you can just get a very quick stun on, and then you can then offload the rest of your abilities. So then you do your W, they're already on fire, so that's going to do more damage. And then your E is just like another, you know, bit of damage there to do, and you just whack your Ignite down. And then hopefully, if you had calculated it correctly, you should kill them. So that's like flash, ultimate, Q, W, E. Flash, ultimate, Q, W, E. And then use your Ignite if you need to. That's a very like basic engage combo. If you don't want to do anything flashy like that, then you can do the basic combo in lane is if you get up close to them, you can land your E, which sets them ablaze, and then you land your Q to stun them, and then you detonate your W over because then you do the massive damage, and then you get the 3 blaze stacks on. That's a very basic combo. Particularly before level 6. Another situation that could end up happening in lane is where you're just poking with your W, and you randomly get a nice Q off. They're stunned, so you run up quickly, land your E, and then run away while they're stunned, just to get that blaze 3 stack off. That happens relatively often in lane as well, so feel free to do that if you're able to do so. Another more difficult combo, this is a bit more advanced now, is that you can actually send out your Q and E the target. As that projectile's coming in, then the target will get stunned. This is particularly difficult to do. I myself have only pulled it off a couple of times in my solo queue games, so don't feel too bad if you find it too difficult to do. If the target's too close to you, it's going to be impossible to do. Like, the target literally needs to be in your max E range for this to work. So you see how that target's stunned there? It has to be your absolute max range on your E. Because if you go in your max Q range here, you're not in range with your E, your conflagration, to actually get the blaze target done. Unless you flash forward. So this is a slightly more advanced one. So you can do Q flash E. You see how the target's stunned? And that is super spicy, very difficult to pull off, but one of the hardest things actually in a support role to do. So Q flash E is totally possible to do with a lot of practice. Or without the flash, you have to be in max E range to be able to pull that combo off. And you know that it happens so fast, and also like the fact that the enemy knows they're not ablazed, so that Q coming through normally wouldn't stun them because they're not on fire. So like it's not as threatening, But what what they don't realize is you're coming in. I messed it up there. It's difficult to do. Let's see if we can do it. There we go. It's difficult to do. I advise you to try it out in the practice store and see if you have the mechanical skill to pull it off. But as I said, I haven't really had to use this in my games a lot. But I think if you can master it, you can probably get a lot of extra kills in lane. And if you end up mastering that kind of combo, it then might be worth picking up that Cosmic Insight that we mentioned earlier in order to get your flash cooldown a little bit lower. Other kind of things, minor things that we did kind of like briefly talk about, if there's a massive team fight coming out, let me just get some extra dummies around. It's not unreasonable in a choke point, say, such as like here, in the random points in the jungle, or just a clustered up team fight. A lot of people are going to be stacked up. In this situation, I would always try and engage with my ultimate. The main reason for this is, A, they're comped up already, so you're going to get bounce stacks no matter what. But also because they're on fire, it's going to enable you to your QWE on what you want to do, and depending on the situation. So the most optimal thing is, you might have like another random target over like near the nexus that isn't quite as comped up as this. So you could do like your ultimate, set the first target ablaze, and then stun, and then you're just doing whatever you can. And you can see how basically we procced 3 passive blaze stacks on 3 targets there. They're all clumped up. We stunned 1 target, done a ridiculous amount of damage to those targets. Also with some of the items that we're going to be picking up later, it's going to be applying more debuffs. You're going to probably get a Dark Harvest stack for that as well. If the first target dies, then they're like very early in the fight, and the other targets have those debuffs on, the damaging debuffs, you're going to probably proc another Dark Harvest stack. So you can see how it can get pretty crazy in a fight overall, particularly if they're clumped up. And this is just from yourself in terms of your own crowd control and own damage. Just think what could happen if your teammates added on top of this. So Brand is extremely dangerous in those fights. But yeah, that's kind of like a main kind of scenario. Sometimes you're popping up your ulti and then stunning first, and then you might want to then prioritize, spreading out the fire as much as possible later on, as opposed to at the start. It doesn't really matter too much. The most important thing is that you have used every single button before you die. You will get focused, and Brand is pretty squishy. It's not uncommon for a team fight to end and that you're dead, but you have actually contributed to killing 3, 4, 5 people. So that's a fairly common scenario. So don't feel too bad if you die. Just only feel bad if you didn't get to use every single ability. So it is almost like button mashing. Just make sure you start with your ultimate, and then honestly you could just like press any button in any order there, really, at that point, and generally be okay. So it's a very easy champion to play, particularly in those team fights in that case. But try the main thing is just being patient. Work out when you're going to get the best ultimate off, when they're positioned poorly and clumped up enough to then get that off. And also don't forget as well, they might be clumped up at the back. So as mentioned before, in a situation like this, where their tank's at the front, but they've got the whole backline is clumped up, so that ult is going to bounce back to at least to someone on their backline. But remember what I mentioned earlier, like if you can get a blaze stack before, or during at least, so if you can do ult and then you stun the target here, this target's already got 3 blaze stacks, so it's going to move on to another target. You're not going to be able to get the maximum amount of blaze debuffs on the enemy backline, but you're going to be applying those debuffs, as I mentioned, Dark Harvest and stuff. You can get some of those 80 carries or squishier supports at the backline down to half HP with just 1 or 2 bounces onto them. That doesn't have to be the full 3 stack, because the debuffs, the blaze stacks, if you pick up other debuffs that run a normal con, you're going to be affecting the healing and stuff like that as well. So it's pretty huge. So look, as you're firing out that ult, make sure you try and get as many other blaze stacks as you can on the original target, just to help the ulti encourage hitting further targets in the backline. So yeah. that's kind of like all the team fight and to kind of like advanced skill mechanic. As I said, you know, this QE combo is, I'm gonna do well one time just for my own benefit. It is the hardest thing to do for sure. Yeah. There we go, did it. It's difficult. It is really difficult. Don't feel too bad if you can't do it, because it is really difficult. You know, even with my win rate that I've got on my NA Smurf account at the moment, I have not had to use that combo once, I believe. Mainly because I've got 100 ping. I think you would need decent ping as well to do this. Like if you actually are having like 80 to plus ping, then doing this move in general is just going to be like pretty difficult to time it out and do. So don't feel too bad if you're not able to do it. Right, we talked a lot about the abilities themselves. A quick skill order right now is, you know, maxing your W is going to be a main form of damage in fights. Then maxing your Q because it reduces the Q cooldown per point. And then maxing your E last because, you know, it's not that urgent. You don't need it more than once in a fight particularly. You know, it's just there to help spread blaze stacks. That's basically it. Moving on to the items now, we have 2 different mythics that you can choose for this one. Of course, you'll be taking Spell Thieves. Oh, plus side on the Spell Thieves, by the way, if you land one ability on an enemy target dummy, or enemy champion, shall I say, same thing really. If you hit a target, so say if we do a Q here, because we don't have an ally. 1 second, I need an ally champion nearby me. So if we hit a Q here, we're getting plus 20 from the, you know, the ability itself, and then another plus 20 from the actual blaze ability. So Brand actually procs 2 Spell Thief charges with 1 ability. So there's the plus 20 and then the plus 20 again. Really cool. Really, really nice for Brand. Very easy way to generate gold in the lane, and it is super easy. One of, if not the easiest champion to get both these procs off. So huge, absolutely huge for him. So coming back into the items, generally early on in the laning phase, you're going to want to prioritize boots pretty early on. I would always advise you to try and get the soul shoes in first. If you're having a really, really, really bad game, Ionian Boots or Lucidity could be the better option, just because it means that your flash will be off cooldown a little bit more. But 99% of the time, you're going to be looking to get these Sork shoes quite early on. Sometimes it's literally your first item buy. The magic penetration is extremely good early in a game. Also, you got that movement speed. Movement speed means that you can get into range to use your abilities more often, or get out of stuff, because Brand has no dash. The only thing he's relying on is flash to get out of things. So Sork shoes can literally save your life and, you know, give you kills as well. So you're heading towards that as quickly as possible. And now the mythic items, you've got the choice between the Liandries and the Ludens. Now, if you're doing the, as I mentioned in the rune section, the item cooldown reduction, you're going to be going Ludens. You don't have to go that build for the Ludens, by the way. Ludens is a very good item. You're going to be picking this in the majority of your games. So there was a change in Ludens recently in Season 11 that enabled it so that when you do damage with an ability, it reduces the cooldown of the Ludens proc, which is base 10 seconds at the moment. And at this current patch, it will reduce it by 0.5 per instance of damage, up to a maximum of 3 times per cast. So, you know, if you get item haste, you're going to be bringing this down to around about 7 seconds every time you can get this proc off. Also, it procs off blaze. So the more instances of damages that you can get, the more procs of Ludens that you're going to have. So right now we have no item cooldown reduction in my kit. So this Ludens is on a 10 seconds cooldown. So if we do a blaze or a Q over to this target here, okay, it's just instantly refreshing because of the cooldown. That would be OP. Let's take off the refreshing things here. Sorry about that. So if you do a Q attack, 10 seconds. Now it's going down quickly. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. It's already hit 4 seconds after just hitting it with a Q and the blaze stack's ticking over. If you had item cooldown reduction at this point, Ludens would nearly be ready again on your next spellcast, essentially. So you can see how fast this is ticking without item cooldown reduction. So obviously you got some real-time seconds in there, but you are chipping away, and that's just with one ability. So, you know, if you're blowing up your ultimate, so let's get out some more things, more target dummies. It's not unusual to get 2, even 3 procs of Ludens in a team fight. Now the base damage of Ludens is, you know, we haven't got any additional AP on us right now, so in a team fight it's going to be doing roughly around about 130 magic damage. You're going to be getting the additional movement speed proc every time it happens. Also, it's got nice flat magic penetration on the item as well, which is going to increase your DPS by a ridiculous amount as well when combined with the Sork shoes, particularly if the enemy hasn't bought any magic resistance. So let's have a little look here with the Ludens in action. Throwing out my ulti. So we've already procced Ludens twice. 3 times. So just from that one set of rotations there, we procced Ludens 3 times. Didn't have to do too much. Wasn't too difficult to do. But 3 additional Ludens procs there. So let's do it again. 1 Ludens proc. 2 Ludens procs. I think that was 3. I think we got 3 there. And now it's ready again. So next time, you know, the fight's still going on. That's going to be our 4th proc. Ulti's on cooldown right now, but that's a 5th proc. It's still going. And then the Ludens is ready again. 6 procs. So you can see how crazy that is. In such a short amount of time without the item cooldown reduction I was talking about earlier, we've got so many procs of Ludens there, an extra 600 AoE damage on the Ludens there. So yeah, that's 100 damage, but it's also going to be doing damage to the target and 3 other targets. So you're potentially hitting 4 targets there for a total of 400 magic damage times 6. So you can see how Ludens can be absolutely insane on brand. You're going to be taking this item in a lot of your games. The exception to this is with Liandry's. Now Liandry's has ability haste on, which means that your abilities will be off cooldown a little bit quicker, which is nice. You will be missing out on the magic penetration, so the raw damage of your abilities will be doing a little bit less. But this item is particularly good if the enemy has lots of tanks on their team. So you remember how we were talking about that Cho'Gath top? They would need to have at least 1 other tank for you to maybe potentially consider this item. If they have 3 tanks, so say if they have like a Thresh in the bot lane as support, a Cho'Gath in the top lane, and maybe a tanky jungler like a Sejuani, hypothetically speaking, Liandry's should be better. You could still do Ludens against that team because you could potentially kill their squishy mid laner and the AD carry quicker, and that's totally fine to do. But if you're the only person in your team that's doing % health damage, which might be a little bit hard for you to identify, honestly, if you're a newer player. If you're not sure, then you know you're up against multiple tanks, like high health targets, then just go Liandry's for safety. But if you are a more advanced player and you know you have someone on your team that can at least do % health damage, then you can probably lean towards Ludens anyway. So then you would pick up the Liandry's. So Liandry's, procs off your abilities, and it's going to add another burn effect over to targets. Now the cool thing about Liandry's is that burn debuff stays on the target until Blaze has finished. So now Blaze is worn off from the target. This target is still burning, and that carries on for quite some time. So you're going to be doing a lot of additional burn damage. Just from these 3 target dummies already, with these targets dummies only having 1,000 health, which isn't that much at all, the burn damage dealt to these champions was 1,000. So it's still a really good item. Anyway, it's just that those Luden procs are just fantastic. And if if one of those items gets nerfed, then you might be looking at the other one instead. But they're both amazing items for brand. Now the second item that you're going to be picking up, no matter what item build you're going to be going, the rest of the build should be the same. It's just a mythic item that you might need to consider differently, is Demonic Embrace. So similar to the Leandries, we're going to be doing % health damage with this. But once again, it works so nice with all the burns that you have with the Blaze. So have a look at the debuff tracker at the top. We're still ticking, working off the Blaze here. We're still going. Blaze is still on the target, they're still taking the Leandry's damage and a Demonic Embrace, and they finally both fall off at the same time. Now the damage dealt to champions on this one wasn't quite as high as the Leandry's, but it's still a respectable amount, and against tanks again is very good. But because how it stays on the target for such a long time with those Blaze stacks, the Demonic Embrace is once again a pretty much no-brainer for taking into Brand's kit. This will be your core build for the majority of the game, what the items I have in my inventory right now. You can, as I said before, if you don't go Leandries, you'd have the Ludens instead. Exactly the same. You have Brand's very, very good because at applying Morellonomicon, which is the Grievous Wound debuff, which helps prevent healing. Because he's attacking so many different targets, and these Blaze stacks are lasting a really, really long time. Once again, if you look at the debuff tracker, since these targets are going to be, it's not applying Grievous Wounds for some reason to these target dummies, even though it says it is, and unfortunately there's not a debuff tracker for it. It's a similar effect to the Demonic Embrace. It'll be on that target for such a long time that you're going to be mitigating a ridiculous amount of healing essentially. If the enemy team hasn't got that much healing on their team, you could go for more utility. Damaging ability slow the target by 30% for 1 second. But once again, because they have a Blaze stack on them for such a long time as well, it's going to feel like a perma-slow. It doesn't slow off the Demonic Embrace though, it would only slow off the Blaze stack. Just so that you're aware of that. Really good utility item. If you've got these two items and the enemy team are building a lot of magic resistance, Void Staff is totally fine to go as well. That's going to increase your DPS even more. If the enemy team has lots of assassins, or you're finding yourself dying a lot in fights and things like that, then Zhonya's as well is a solid option. One thing I've never tested out, which I'm going to test out for you guys for now, I'm going to learn something new today. Does Zhonya's bounce your ultimate? Let's find out, because I'm sure someone will ask and I won't know the answer until now. So I'm gonna ult the target, and then I'm gonna pop Zhonya's. Unfortunately not. There you learned. I learned too. So Zhonya's unfortunately won't continue bouncing your ultimate when that's going on. But Zhonya's is still going to protect you from assassins, so pay attention to your ultimate when you do decide to pop your Zhonya's, just to protect yourself, and hope that you're not mitigating your damage down too much so that you'll die anyway. But the whole theme of Brand is debuffs. You're not caring too much about raw damage. It's all about getting as many debuffs as you can down as possible, staying alive, seeing if you can do another rotation after that, and by that point you're either dead and lost the fight, or you've killed the enemy team. And Brand is just so good right now. It is absolutely bonkers how good Brand is right now. As I mentioned, I'll show you my stats over onto my NA account. So I've been playing with NA content creators, if you watch my channel a lot. If we switch over to this scene. So this is my op.gg. This is my account, my Bizzleberry account. And yeah, as you can see, when my highest win rate on this is 83% in 23 games played. The champion's absolutely disgusting at the moment. I would highly recommend playing Brand until like high plat. Then you might want to start thinking of some different champions potentially. You can still play Brand in Diamond Plus for sure. It's just that people get much better on those hard engaged champions and figuring out how to counter you because Brand's main weakness is that hard engage. He's very squishy, very immobile. You know, if playing against something like an Alistair or a Leona, it can be particularly difficult to do. But you know, honestly, if you're good mechanically and you wanna like solo carry, which you can, the stats here prove it. It's absolutely bonkers, and this is on 100 ping for me as well. So, and without doing that advanced stun little thing there as well. Now let's go back over to the main thing. There's one more last point I want to make on Brand before you disappear. Brand is very, very good at neutral objectives, you know, particularly if you got the Demonic Embrace in and if you got the Leandries as well. The Dragon and the Baron, you're going to do crazy amounts of damage to these targets. Now, I'm not entirely sure I can solo it, but I'm going to give it a go just, you know, for an example in terms of, you know, his actual damage output on these fights. You know, Dragon's fairly easy to kill. We shouldn't have any trouble killing the Dragon. Get the blaze on the target. You want to delay your Q a tiny bit if you haven't got the haste in through early. Super easy, super simple, really easy to do. Let's just heal myself up here. We'll go pay a visit to Baron. The Baron's going to be, you know, a bit more difficult to kill solo. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be able to do it, but we can give it a go. You can see the amount of damage that he does. So the blaze stack there, the AoE 3, did 700 damage. There's actually been a couple of instances. You know, the explosion here, 628 that time. I've actually out-smote the jungler in terms of like securing those objectives as well. So, you know, if we had a tank there, you could probably two-man the Baron with a tank. Or if you had an extreme healer for some reason. I'm trying to think of a situation if you're playing Brand in the AP carry role and you had a striker, you could probably do that. But 2 or 3 manning Baron extremely quickly is totally possible. And highly advised, honestly, because you should be abusing your max health damage, and you know, Baron's a very easy, you know, target to do that on. Well, I hope this Brand guide helps you out, gives you the right direction on how to essentially solo carry your support games. You know, if you are interested in playing any other support champions, whether it's for other AP champions like Brand, like, you know, Zyra for example, or enchanters like Seraphine or Nami, or if you are interested in playing some tanks like Thresh or Leona, have a look at my channel. I haven't covered all the support champions yet for season 11. It's a work in progress, but I have covered them in season 10. You can always pay attention to the ones in season 10. Most of the information is correct if you just ignore the items, because season 11 changed a lot of the items coming out. So hope this helps. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe. I stream also on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. So if you want to ask me any questions there live, I'm more than happy to help you out. And look forward to seeing you over there as well. So take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck.